In this module, I will demonstrate the setting up of our VM kernel ports for iSCSI multipathing, as well as working with LUNs and the creation of our VMFS and NFS data stores. So before we could present a LUN on an iSCSI storage device as storage space to our ESXi host, there are a few steps that we must perform from the iSCSI initiator side. Mainly, we will need to create our VM kernel ports to be used for storage traffic. Let's just keep in mind that the IP configuration that we would assign to our VM kernel ports, these would need to be on the same subnet as the iSCSI target. So for iSCSI multipathing to function correctly, we would need to ensure that each path in the network uses a single NIC. Okay, so for this demonstration, I have a new installation of ESXi here, and I'll go ahead and create a new vSwitch with multiple VM kernel ports on that new vSwitch. And that would allow our iSCSI connection to scale across multiple NICs. So basically what I did was I brought up a new installation of ESXi, and I added two new adapters. So apart from the first adapter that we're using for management traffic, we have two additional adapters that we will dedicate to a new vSwitch, and that vSwitch we will dedicate towards our iSCSI traffic. So once we have our VM kernel ports configured on our new vSwitch, then I'll go ahead and add our software iSCSI adapter. This would be our initiator that would be communicating with the target. Once we have the initiator in place, we'll need to bind the software. We'll need to bind the software adapter to the VM kernel ports that we will go ahead and create. And once we have this infrastructure in place, we would discover our iSCSI target, and our LUN should then be presented to our ESXi host, and then we'll carve our data stores out from that. Okay, so let's get started with this. As I mentioned, for this demonstration, I have a new host here that I brought up. So this is ESXi 4 we'll be working on. Okay, so ESXi 4, if I go under manage and then under network in here, if you notice here, we have our default vSwitch 0 with our management network. This vSwitch is pointing to the VMNIC 0 physical adapter. If we come down in our list here, in physical adapters, we have two unused adapters here, VMNIC 1 and VMNIC 2. So these are the two that we would be binding to a new vSwitch that I would be creating for storage traffic. So let's get into the configuration of this, to deploy the new vSwitch and add in these two NICs onto it. Okay, so I'm creating a new VM kernel network adapter here. So we have the option here of using the existing vSwitch 0 or creating a new standard vSwitch. So I'll go ahead and create a new switch. Okay, and then for the assign adapters, I'll click on the plus sign here and assign these two adapters to this vSwitch. So you could hold a control and select the second adapter and just hit an OK here. Okay, so both of these adapters are listed under active, and that's what we want. Okay, we would configure this at the port group level, sorry, at the VM kernel port level differently in a little bit. But for now, we need these two adapters to be configured as active on this vSwitch. So I'll just go ahead and hit on next here. We're presented with the option of creating a VM kernel port whilst we are here. So let's just call this VM kernel port storage. So I want to create two VM kernel ports on this vSwitch. So let's call this one storage 1, and then we'll create a second one, and we'll call that storage 2. Okay, so we are not enabling any of the services here. So I'll just hit on next. So ideally, here's where you would want to manually or statically assign your IP address, and the IP address that we're assigning here, this should be on the same subnet as our iSCSI target. Okay, so just for testing here, I'll just leave this to automatic and click on finish. Okay, so if we go to VM kernel adapters, we should see we have now the storage 1 VM kernel adapter connected to this vSwitch. Actually, this will give us a better view. So we have our vSwitch 0 for our management traffic and our VM traffic, and then we have our vSwitch 1 with our storage 1 VM kernel port. So what I'm going to do is create a new VM kernel port, and we'll call this storage 2. Okay. So it's asking which one of the standard vSwitch we want to select here. So we're working with vSwitch 1. So go ahead and select that. Hit on next. And let's just call this storage 2. Just hit on next here. Leave this to the default. And click on finish. So now we have two additional VM kernel ports, the VMK1 and the VMK2. Okay. This should take a couple seconds here. Okay, so the view finally refreshed. So we have our two VM kernel ports here. Come back to vSwitch here, our virtual switches. We should now see that we have vSwitch 1 with two VM kernel ports on it. If you were to select one of the VM kernel port here, we'll notice that it's pointing to go out both of the physical adapters. If we select the second one, storage 2 here, it's doing the same. Okay, so what we are trying to achieve is our storage 1 traffic should go over one of the interface, and storage 2 should go over the second interface here. Okay, this is how we'll configure the multi-pattern. So for this to work, we'll need to go in and edit the daemon and failover policy at the VM kernel port level. Okay, so this is at the switch level here. So let's go into storage 1. I'll edit storage 1. Notice here I'm working with storage 1. I'm not going on top to work with a virtual switch any longer. I'm working with storage 1 VM kernel port. So if I was to come under daemon and failover here, I'm presented with the option of overriding these settings. So I need to just override the failover order. Okay, so I'll hit on failover here. So what I'm trying to do is have, let me see if I could just move this around to have a better view. Is to have storage 1 connected to VMNIC 1. Okay, and I need to have VMNIC 2 be on use for storage 1 VM kernel port. So I'll select NIC 2 and I'll move this down under unused adapters. I just hit the down arrow. So now we have VMNIC 1 would be active for storage 1 VM kernel port, whereas VMNIC 2 would be unused for the storage 1 VM kernel port. Just select OK here. Okay. Okay, so if we select back this, so now we have our storage 1 is going over VMNIC 1. So we'll need to configure the same for storage 2. So we want storage 2 to go over VNIC 2 and have the VMNIC 1 be unused for storage 2 VM kernel port. So let's go ahead and configure that now. I select storage 2 here, come to the pencil icon, under daemon and failover, override. So now I need VMNIC 2 to be active here and VMNIC 1 to be unused. So I'll just move this down and then go ahead and hit an OK here. This should take a couple seconds. Okay, let's just refresh our view here. Okay, so there we have it. Storage 2 is now going over VMNIC 2 and storage 1 is going over VMNIC 1. Okay. So recall in our slides we covered the different types of iSCSI initiators. So in our case here we'll be using the software initiator that's built in the VM kernel. Okay, so I would need to add the software initiator, and we would do that under storage. If I go under storage here, these are some of our adapters that we have, storage adapters that we have configured currently on this host. So I'll just need to hit the plus sign here and just add a software iSCSI adapter. Once this is added, we should see a new adapter listed here. Okay, so here we have it. We have our new iSCSI software adapter. This is the identifier for this adapter. Currently it's not configured with any targets or so that's what we'll go ahead and do next. We'll configure this to connect over to our iSCSI target, and then we'll bind our VM kernel ports to this iSCSI target. Sorry, to this adapter. So what I'll do is go ahead and bind this iSCSI software adapter to our VM kernel ports that we just created. We'll do that first, and then we'll go and discover our iSCSI target. So that is configured under a network port binding here. If I hit this plus icon, the list of my VM kernel adapters should show up here. So we'll be working with storage 1 and storage 2. So I'll go ahead and select those two. Once I select that, it should tell us here if this is compliant. Okay, so it is. So the next thing I'll do is rescan our storage adapter in this host. This icon up here, and this would rescan this storage adapter to discover our new storage devices. So let me just hit that. So it will scan for new storage or new volumes here. Next, I'll go under targets, and I'll set up this to point to my iSCSI target. So what I'll do is select add here, and then just add in the IP address of my iSCSI server. So this would do a send target request, and our target should present the different LANs that it have available. So just go ahead and hit OK here. So I'll need to do a rescan again here. Okay, so once this is completed, we should see our LANs being presented here. So in this case, our iSCSI target, it's presenting our 120 gigs disk that we did created on OpenFiler. Okay, so we could go ahead and do the other one too for Windows, the iSCSI target that we configure on Windows, but I'll just work with this for now. So now that we have our LAN presented to us here, we could go now and create a data store off of this storage here. Okay, we have some additional information on this adapter here, the name, the status of it. We could go ahead and disable this if we need to. This is the discover LAN here, our devices that it would have discovered, and the current active path that we're using. We have that listed here too. What is interesting too is under static discovery here, if you were to click this, although we didn't statically configure anything, it would automatically place this target that we would have dynamically discovered under static discovery. So under advanced, we have some of the more specific settings we could do for our iSCSI adapter. So we'll just leave all of those to default. So now I'll just go and create a new data store from this LAN. There are multiple ways I could do this. I could just come under this host here, right click, and go to storage, and then select new data store. Okay, that's one way. I can also do this at the data center level, or just right click here and go to storage and create a new data store. Okay, so let's just go to the host and storage and new data store. Okay, so we have a few options here. If you're creating a VMFS data store, NFS data store, or a virtual volume, we'll be working with VMFS here. So I'll leave that as at the default and hit next. So we'll give this data store a name. Let's just call this one OpenFiler iSCSI. Okay. Here I'll need to select the LAN that is presented to us here. This is on LAN 0, and I'll just hit on next. So here I'm presented now with the option of utilizing this entire space that we have on this LAN, or just use a smaller amount, and then we could grow to this maximum size later. So I want to demonstrate increasing the size of our data store. So what I'll do is just put this a bit smaller now. So let's just do a 80 gig here, and just hit on next. Okay, so this would be a VMFS 5 data store. This would be the partition format, data store size, type, and that's the name that we assigned. Just a little summary here, and I'll go ahead and hit finish. So if I was to come to our storage view here, this data store should now show up here. Oh, here it is. Okay, so we could work with this data store as if it's directly attached storage on our ESXi host, although this is going over the network and being accessed over the iSCSI protocol. So we could browse this data store, we could add virtual machines, we could increase the size of this data store. Okay, so we're in the browser view there. What I want to demonstrate too is increasing the capacity here. Okay, so I could increase data store capacity. Just right click in that data store, select that. So here I have the option of utilizing the remaining space on this LAN. We assign 80 gigs. This is the remaining space, the 34 gigs here. I could select that. I could assign the entire 34 gigs now, or just let's just say I'm assigning 20 gigs from this. Okay, and hit next here, and that will bring up our data store to 99, close to 100 gigs here, and we still have we should have some free space still remaining. So we are increasing this by 20. So now we have 100 gig data store here. Next, I want to demonstrate how we would add a NFS data store to this ESXi host. So let me go back over to my host and cluster view. If I was to right click this host again, go back to storage and new data store. Now we'll go with the option of creating an NFS data store. So I'll select that and hit on next here. We'll select NFS version 3. This is new in ESXi 6.0. We could now create a connect over to NFS 4.1. So I'll just use 3, hit on next. Let's just give this a name. Now let's call this Open Filer NFS. The path to this, I'll need to enter that there. Let me just enter the IP address for the NFS server for now. This is at 182. Let me just move this over to our work in progress so I could have the path. I'll go over to my Open Filer and just pull the path that we need to enter in here. So let me come here. This should be under shares. Where to select shares here. This is the path that we're connecting over to. Okay, so let me just copy this and then come back here to my vSphere web client, go back to my work in progress, pull this up here and just paste my path in here. Okay, so that's the path where the share is located on the NFS server. We have one option here of mounting this as read-only. So ideally you'd want to do this if you're just storing ISO images on this data store. But if you need to run virtual machines, you'll just leave this unchecked. So just hit on next here. It gives us a little summary again. And then I'll go ahead and hit on finish. Okay, so if I go back to my storage view here, I should now see my Open Filer NFS data store. So I could work with this data store just like directly attached storage, load a virtual machine. We could configure our virtual machine for high availability on this storage, just as if we were working with iSCSI. Okay. So if we needed to build or create another data store from our Windows SAN that we created, we'll just do the same thing. We'll just right click here, create a new data store. Sorry, data store. New data store here. And we'll just try to connect over to our NFS share that we would have created on our Windows stand. Let me see, what was that share. That was, we call that one NFS1. So let me just minimize that. It's taking a little bit here. Let me just go directly on this ESXi host. Need to deploy a new data store. So I'll choose NFS, and let's just connect over to that Windows stand. Let's call this serve NFS. Let me just get an IP address for that host. This host is at 183. And then we're just connecting over to the folder NFS1. This should be it. Say we wanted to just mount this as a read-only, we'll select that. Same options here. And that's it. If we come here now, we should now see our Windows NFS export here. Here it is. And basically the same thing we'll do to we can do to for setting up of our iSCSI on our iSCSI client here, initiator, to connect to our Windows iSCSI target. So you would come under storage, go to your adapter, and then you just add in the target here. Under target, we just add our Windows SAN here. .183. Just rescan my adapter there. Okay, so my Windows iSCSI target is not showing up here. I think I see the problem. I need to just add this under my my target, the initiator address here. So let's just cancel that. Let me pull this up really fast. Should be able to configure this here, the initiator address. If you go under initiator, we should be able to just add in this IQN here. Okay, so let me just pull up back my vSphere web client and do a rescan here now, and hopefully this should work now. Okay, so here we have our Windows iSCSI target, Windows Server iSCSI target. So we could just go ahead now and create a new data store from that target, just like we did. So let's do that really fast. New data store, VMFS, and let's just call this one select that free LAN capacity there. In this case, we are assigning the entire space, the entire 120 gigs. So just hit next, and just confirm this now. And that's it. So we have configured our ESXi host iSCSI initiator to connect over both to the OpenFiler and Windows Server iSCSI targets. And I have demonstrated to the setting up of our ESXi NFS client to connect over to our NFS server, both on Windows Server and OpenFiler.